Okay, let's unpack this. You've sent over some really fascinating material about the world's most dangerous mountains. When we think dangerous peak, our minds often jump straight to these huge icy giants like Everest, maybe, picturing blizzards and extreme cold. But
Yeah.
here's where it gets really interesting,
Mm,
because this deep dive, I think it's going to challenge that image a bit.
exactly. What's truly fascinating here, looking into sources like this 10 most dangerous mountains piece you sent, is finding out that danger isn't always what you'd expect. It's not just about being the highest peak, not at all.
Right.
So our mission here is really to pull out those key insights, those nuggets of knowledge, to help you understand all the different factors, sometimes really surprising ones that make these huge mountains, and actually some smaller ones too, so deadly. Like take Everest. It's got that, marquee status.
Right.
But how does it actually stack up in terms of like fatality rates compared to lesser known peaks? That's a big question right off the bat.
It absolutely is, and it definitely challenges that first thought. Okay, so if we're tackling the giants first, let's start with Everest. You mentioned its marquee status. Most people probably assume it's the deadliest just because of its sheer scale, sitting there at 29,029 feet on the Nepal-China border. But what did the sources actually say about its lethality? Does that fame mean it has the highest death rate?
Well, surprisingly, no. Not when you look at it per successful summit. I mean, it's incredibly challenging, obviously, and people certainly die there. But our sources show Everest has a relatively lower fatality rate compared to some other big peaks. Since the year 2000, they've recorded over 7,500 summits, and the average is about 1.4 deaths for every 100 successful climbs.
Only 1.4.
Yeah. So while it demands huge endurance and respect, its danger isn't necessarily about like an overwhelming chance of dying if you attempt it. It seems more about the sheer scale of climbing operations there and maybe just its global fame.
That's a really important distinction. Okay, so if Everest isn't the statistical deadliest, which mountain holds a more chilling reputation? The sources then point us to K2, right? World's second highest, 28,251 feet, Pakistan and China. This one apparently has a particularly horrible reputation, especially it notes, for women climbers.
Uh-huh.
What did we find out about K2's dangers?
Oh, K2 absolutely lives up to that reputation, yeah. Our sources really highlight how extremely remote it is, and the climb is incredibly long. Expeditions need a ton of resources, and there's just no room for error. It's notorious for sudden avalanches, really severe, unpredictable weather, all contributing to a grim, roughly 10% fatality rate for those who try.
10%. Wow.
And that specific historical pattern with female climbers, it's truly tragic. After Wanda Rutkiewicz, the first woman to summit back in '86, the next 5 women climbers died within 18 years, either on K2 itself or nearby peaks.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It wasn't until Adern Posabon in 2004 and then Vanessa O'Brien in 2017 that terrible sort of curse, if you will, was broken. It really shows how danger can be tied to the mountain's inherent difficulties, sure, but also sometimes to these specific, very sad historical patterns.
That is a chilling history. Okay, so K2 highlights remoteness and these historical patterns. What about a mountain where it's just the raw, unyielding power of nature that's the main killer? Our deep dive brought us to Kangchenjunga, third highest, 28,169 feet on the India-Nepal border. What makes this one so perilous? It even inspired a Bond novel, apparently.
Kangchenga is a perfect example, yeah.
Yeah.
Stunningly beautiful mountain, but incredibly dangerous. The sources pin its deadliness almost entirely on the bitter, relentless cold and the constant, ever-present threat of avalanches. With over 200 recorded summits, its fatality rate, as of 2010 figures anyway, hit a staggering 20%.
20%.
Yep. It's a stark reminder that even without the global fame of Everest or the specific history of K2, just raw, unadulterated nature, extreme cold, unpredictable snow can be just as deadly, maybe even more so.
That brings us to Nanga Parbat over in Pakistan. Ninth highest, 26,657 feet. This one's famously known as the killer monster of Pakistan. What kind of danger does this monster present, according to our sources?
It absolutely lives up to that name.
Yeah.
Nanga Parbat is just defined by these immense ice and rock ridges. Its southern side, the Rupal face, boasts what many call the world's highest mountain face on Earth. It just rockets up 15,090 feet from its base. Astonishing.
Incredible.
It became a huge focus for German climbers back in the 1930s, partly because Everest was mostly off limits to them then. And before Hermann Buhl, an Austrian, finally made the first successful ascent in 1953. The history is grim. 31 people died just trying. So this speaks to a different kind of danger, doesn't it? Tied to those pioneering, often desperate attempts on these really formidable, unconquered faces. Human ambition meeting just immense natural resistance.
Definitely. And then there's Annapurna in central Nepal, 10th highest, 26,545 feet. This peak has an astonishingly high fatality rate among those 8,000-meter peaks. What makes Annapurna stand out in such a terrifying way?
Annapurna holds the highest fatality rate among all the 8,000-meter mountains. It's a really sobering statistic, 33%.
A third.
A third, yeah. Our sources reveal that out of 191 climbers who've successfully summited this very avalanche-prone peak, 63 have lost their lives. It also saw that devastating incident in 2014. A huge snowstorm triggered an avalanche, 43 deaths, and they had to rescue over 500 people caught in the area. It just emphasizes that even in popular trekking regions, the mountains can hide these extreme sudden dangers, especially when you combine that with powerful, unpredictable weather. It's less about the technical climb itself, maybe, and more about the raw, sudden force of nature.
We're moving down in elevation a bit now, but clearly not in danger. Cielo Grande, Peruvian Andes, 20,814 feet. Maybe less famous by name, but etched in many minds because of the book and film Touching the Void. What unique dangers does this mountain present, shown so vividly in that story?
Right, Cielo Grande. Its danger really comes from its incredibly sheer west and south faces. They demand super technical, very vertical climbing. And yeah, the Touching the Void story from our sources illustrates it perfectly. Simon Yates and Joe Simpson faced this just unprecedented challenge on the west face. Joe broke his leg coming down. Simon tried lowering him, got into an impossible situation, and famously had to make that decision to cut the rope.
Unbelievable story.
Miraculously, Joe survived a 100-foot fall into a crevasse, then crawled 5 miles back to camp over 3 agonizing days. This mountain really exemplifies danger in terms of extreme technical difficulty and just unforgiving, isolated terrain, where one mistake, one accident can have immediate catastrophic consequences.
From Peru, we travel way north to Alaska to Denali, 20,320 feet, highest summit in North America. What makes this peak so formidable? How is its danger maybe different from the others we've talked about?
Denali is unique. Its danger isn't just its height, though it's big, it's the extreme latitude. Our sources explain that, a peak this size closer to the equator would have less oxygen, obviously, but Denali's high latitude means the effective altitude, the way your body experiences it, is much higher than its measured height suggests. The percentage of oxygen is far lower than you'd expect.
Okay.
So the risk of altitude sickness is greatly increased. Climbs typically take 2 to 4 weeks. It's a long haul. And only about half the people who attempt it actually make it to the top. Plus, it's also susceptible to earthquakes. So its danger is less about a quick sprint and more about a long, sustained battle against extreme cold, seriously low oxygen, and just immense isolation. A real test of endurance.
Okay, shifting gears quite a bit now. Our deep dive takes us to a different kind of danger. The Mont Blanc Massif in France, 15,777 feet. It has this long history of accidents, considered the birthplace of modern mountaineering, first descent way back in 1786. What makes this iconic mountain so perilous today?
Mont Blanc's danger is really distinct because it's one of the most, maybe the most over-trafficked mountains in the world. It sees over 20,000 climbers every year.
20,000.
Yeah, huge numbers. And while its routes certainly have objective dangers, avalanches, falling rocks, or sources, like an article from The Atlantic mentioned, suggests its deadliness really comes from the sheer volume of people and the cumulative exposure over a long climb rather than just pure technical difficulty. It averages something like 12 rescue calls per weekend during peak season, and shockingly claims an estimated 100 lives a year.
100 lives a year.
Making it the deadliest mountain in Europe. Here, the danger is heavily influenced by human factors. Sheer numbers, widely varied experience levels, and just the increased potential for human error in crowded conditions.
And building on that theme, right nearby, is the iconic Matterhorn, border of Switzerland and Italy, 14,691 feet, hugely famous since its first climb in 1865. What's the hidden danger here when so many people want to climb it?
Yeah, it's quite similar to Mont Blanc in some ways. The Matterhorn's popularity is a primary source of its danger, but maybe with its own twist. While the standard routes are considered pretty straightforward for experienced climbers, they become incredibly dangerous for inexperienced hikers, especially when it's crowded. People who are maybe overeager or just careless can easily dislodge loose rocks onto climbers below them. That's a big one. Plus, afternoon thunderstorms are a really common and serious threat during the summit season. It averages about 12 deaths a year, with over 500 recorded fatalities since that first climb.
500.
So again, it's the allure of this famous mountain combined with high traffic and very different skill levels, creating this unique hazard. It's less about the mountain's inherent technical challenge for experts and much more about that human element interacting with its popularity.
And finally, a peak that might genuinely surprise a lot of us, completely shattering that initial image of a dangerous mountain. Mount Washington in New Hampshire, just 6,288 feet tall. How does this relatively small mountain manage to land on a most dangerous list alongside giants like K2?
This is such a powerful example of how danger isn't about height, it's about concentrated intensity. Mount Washington is deadly purely because of its incredibly rapid, unpredictable weather shifts. We're talking hurricane-force winds, icy precipitation appearing out of nowhere. Its summit temperature can plummet to -50 Fahrenheit. And it holds the record for the strongest wind ever measured directly by humans on Earth, a staggering 231 miles per hour.
231 miles per hour on a 6,000-foot hill.
Exactly. Over 100 lives have been lost there. Its true danger, as our deep dive shows, lies in these extreme microclimates. It's like a concentrated dose of the worst possible weather packed into a relatively small, accessible area. And that accessibility often lulls people into a false sense of security. It's a brutal reminder that Mother Nature doesn't need a 20,000-foot peak to be absolutely lethal.
So what does this all mean for us thinking about these incredible and sometimes terrifying places? This deep dive has really revealed just the astonishing breadth of what makes a mountain dangerous.
Right.
It's clearly not just about towering height or extreme cold, is it? We've seen notorious reputations, the historical context of, those early dangerous attempts. We've seen human factors like overcrowding and inexperience playing a huge role. And then just the raw, unpredictable power of nature itself, like on Kangchenjunga or even Mount Washington. These mountains challenge our assumptions at every turn.
Absolutely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this deep dive really underscores that danger in mountaineering is, well, it's a profoundly multifaceted concept. It's not a simple statistic you can just look up. And it's certainly not always intuitive, right? It can be about extreme elevation, sure, but also specific geology, tragic history, human congestion, lack of experience, or just these freakish concentrated weather events. So this raises, I think, an important question for you listening to ponder. Given these wildly varying definitions of danger, from weather to traffic to history, what truly constitutes the most dangerous mountain in your mind? And maybe, what does the enduring allure of these perilous peaks, despite everything we've discussed, tell us about human ambition, our drive to explore, and our relationship with the untamed, wild parts of our world? Leaves you with something to think about.